This short documentary series on the humanities in Europe today, which starts from Europe but will expand to cover, I hope, the whole world, is the initiative of the European network of humanities centers and institutes. We decided collectively with our colleagues that it would be a good idea to present a series of portraits of leading figures in the humanities in our part of the world, and to use them as sources of inspirations, as role models, if you wish, for practitioners and students alike. The portraits of these very sort of charismatic, highly accomplished, distinguished professionals accomplishes another aim. It allows us to trace a genealogical sort of portrait of where the humanities have been, where they are at today, and where they could go, insofar as each person that we interview is asked to trace their own itinerary, past, present, and future. And simply by asking a question like, what was your faculty called when you studied as an undergraduate? And noticing the semantic, the institutional, the political transformations that the field has gone through. Just by doing that, I think the viewers should be in a position to measure the extent of the changes and the extent of the vitality of the field. The hope of this mini-series is indeed that we can collectively, as practitioners but also as spectators, express our love for, our trust in, our respect for this amazing field of the humanities at a time in its history when it is coming under attack in the press, in the public debate, in policy making and financial decisions that are really penalizing this field. The humanities in the 21st century, as you will see in the different portraits of these great figures we're offering to you, are a vital, vibrant, critical, creative, extremely accountable field, proud of its history, confident of its place in the world, and very hopeful for the future. We really hope that you will enjoy watching these great figures, and maybe you will be yourself tempted to run out and interview somebody that you know in your own neighborhood, in your own circles, because the humanities are everywhere and for everybody.
I'm a writer generally, but art itself began to be such an omnipresent and transdisciplinary practice that it incorporates so many different practices, theory research, political activism, and henceforth certain practices that get documented become part and parcel of it, because I think that contemporary art today is one of those artistic practices that is extremely theoretical and extremely coined with contemporary critical theory. My first major and origin is comparative literature, and since it was early post-Soviet times, it was still not yet enough multidisciplinary. That's why I had to shift to philosophy that was in the process of getting rid of any Marxism that it contained and acquiring as much post-structuralism and as much post-psychoanalysis as it could. So it was the period of delving into this kind of new translations of post-structuralist philosophy, and I combined farewell to comparative literature with the new department of analytical anthropology in Philosophy Institute, as well as working for the publishing house, which translated first works by Derrida, Deleuze, Adorno, etc., etc.
This was in Moscow?
This was in Moscow.
At the State University of Moscow?
This was Philosophy Institute partly, and the publishing house Logos. But after my studies as a comparative literary theorist. The Soviet education and philosophic education was permeated too much by the dogmatic and ideologized Marxism, which never had a research dimension, and therefore after the demise of the Soviet ideology it was completely rejected and dismissed. But at the same time, what became the focus of philosophic interest was mainly post-structuralist philosophy, which was coined with the postmodernist practices in art. I think this was 90s, and this was connected with a very active and with a very active practice in translating most important pieces. This was the only way of somehow to escape from this harsh situation of harsh economic situation of post-Soviet period, where humanitarian sciences were completely collapsed. So this was, if you come into humanities nowadays, you will not find a person of my age. I was born in 70, which means that you will find only someone who is like 5-7 years younger or 10 years older. Because all people went into production, into creative industry. It was complete collapse of funding of any humanities backed up and supported by universities. It was free, but at the same time it was so low paid and so collapsed institutionally that this was the edge of survival. I think that it's a magic that I remained in this field. There was this very dramatic split, so extreme indulgence and delving into post-structuralist theory, and this was mostly brought by a generation who were a bit older than me, our professors who were like 10, 15 years older, but then generation who came a bit later than me got delved into Marxist theory, Lukács, post-operaism, so different modes of Marxist theory, nevertheless with some kind of suspicion to post-structuralism and some kind of suspicion to postmodernity. It collapsed because it was primitive accumulation period, and primitive accumulation period completely demised, completely just drove away and evicted any research capacity and possibility of educational institutions. It was
the profit motive.
The profit motive was primary, and everyone who, for instance, graduated university of my years, they never returned to humanities anymore. My art practice was not labeled as art practice, I would say, because the development was first politicizing back into leftist theory, because pronouncing such names as Marx was considered to be impossible in post-Soviet situation. It was almost the same as proclaiming Stalinism. So it took some time. It took some time for a certain generation to repoliticize itself and redemocratize, not in terms of neoliberal capital, which was identified with democracy, but to redemocratize oneself in some kind of egalitarian emancipatory theories, which happened end of 90s, beginning of 2000, and brought Marx and Marxist theory back, as well as repoliticized artistic practices. And in the 90s, this was the biggest obsession of artists, and even politically based and radical leftist artists, that nobody needs them. Actually, humanities were collapsed, but they were self-organized. So this was a self-organized, absolutely free practice, which got afterwards appropriated in Putin's period in terms of like institutionalizing them financially and politically. I work for state institutions, which is a problem, but nevertheless, as we discussed already, non-state institutions are oligarchy supported, which doesn't make them in any way different from state position. I work for Russian State University for Humanities at the Department of Art Theory, as well as at National Center of Contemporary Art, where I run the theory department as well. I think state humanities system is a system that you all the time have to subvert and have to deceive, to use it somehow to do things that it doesn't know that you are doing. So you label it, especially now in contemporary austerity politics period in Russia, you have to label it one way but implement it another way. At the moment, in my institution, when we are applying for the project, we cannot use the word masochism, sexuality, political struggle, resistance, subversion, because it's a state institution. Nevertheless, not yet have I been censured for any lecture which is developing such themes. Drama and poetry go together for me because I'm obsessed with multiple voices. And lyrical poetry is only one voice. And multiple voices is this multivocal density which disorganizes my subject, and I want to speak other voices, and this is obsession. Actually, I want to stop to be myself, and this is a wonderful affect of stopping to be myself, and this is the most inspiring. However, the blame and accusation is always this Foucauldian issue that you cannot speak the voices of the others. Which, well, I agree with completely, but nevertheless, the obsession not to speak your voice is also a decision, right? I think I have the danger of making two biographies and none of them quite fully, which is a bit suspicious for me.
So you may have to make priorities, that's what you're saying.
But it's impossible, because the experience that you get from art practice is enriching the theory, because it gives the knowledge about what is performativity and what is this transpositions, etc. On the other hand, the theoretical density allows you to generalize things within practice. Post-dramatic theater is not a fully and sufficiently conceptual art because I think it doesn't revisit and reflect on its farewell to drama, which is very important for art and for modernity to reflect on its own edifice, which is very important for contemporary art because it always saying farewell to its own self, which never ends, and this is part and parcel of modernity as well as postmodernity and all avant-garde practices actually. And theater, as long as it tries to contemporize itself, migrates towards post-drama and also post-humanity, because drama is this nexus of human fates, etc., this messy element of human, but it does not conceptualize, it doesn't reflect and revisit why it does this, unlike contemporary art, which many, many times implemented this self-critique. Nowadays, we face a big collapse of research practice and monetizing of upgrading certain skills, and even master's research or PhD research is very much connected with upgrading of certain people who pay for their I don't know, developing their skills to return back to their industries with some kind of upgraded condition, and not contributing to the scholarly research, but rather returning back with the acquired skills to the industry. I don't know, I wouldn't give the ready label for the department I would need, but I'm dreaming about organizing a research school. A research school which would be a team of research fellows constructing some kind of drawbacks and new acquisitions which we could gain from our political, social, as well as scholarly experience. Some kind of new research comradeship.
Almost like a laboratory?
Yes, a laboratory, because we had such laboratory in the 90s. It was run by a Russian post-structuralist philosopher, Valery Podoroga, and it was called first the School of Post-Classical Research, and afterwards the Department of Analytical Anthropology. And everyone went through this. I mean, the whole this post-Soviet generation was constructed by this place, and all the Western philosophers first went to this department. Derrida, Jameson, Agamben, they all went through this department. Jean-Luc Nancy, Le Glabart. I mean, this was the place where all Russian passing Western intellectuals had to first go there. Negri, Hart. This was the passing by harbor. But nothing like that exists since it decomposed. People went abroad. People who were constructing this department gradually emigrate. So I would really dream about this such kind of school, but constructed by my generation or the generation that comes after.